Hello everyone, welcome to Captain Hepp's School of Flight. In this inaugural video we're going to talk about what makes an aircraft fly and how this affects you in game. So with that, let's get started. So there are four basic forces on an aircraft in flight. There's lift, thrust, drag, and gravity. We're going to talk about lift, which is what the wings generate as they're pulled through the air, thrust, which pulls the plane, drag, which is the resistance generated by the air as the thrust pulls the plane, and gravity, which is generated by the earth. So lift is generated by the wings. You have induced lift and you have dynamic lift. Induced lift is generated by air flowing over the wing, and dynamic lift is generated by air flowing under the wing. Your life becomes complicated when this flow of air is disrupted, causing the wing to stall. Usually this takes place when the wing is moving slowly through the air so that it doesn't have quite enough air flowing over and under the wing to generate the requisite lift to keep the plane in the air. In this case, it's a fairly benign, rather gradual descent. However, the same phenomenon can be experienced while in a hard turn because the plane, while pulling hard G's, will weigh more compared to the amount of lift that it can generate. What happens is, as the speed decreases or as the load increases, your angle of attack will increase. This is the angle at which the wing is passing through the air. As you can see, as that angle increases, the flow of air over the top of the wing is disrupted, causing the wing to stall and start to fall. This is a complete and total loss, what you see here, of what we call induced lift. That is the air flowing over the top of the wing. There have been a number of devices invented to try and mitigate or reduce the effect this has on the wing as a whole, one of which is the trailing edge flap, which you can see increases the overall curvature or camber of the wing's airfoil to try and generate more lift at lower speeds when the extra drag that it generates is at least acceptable, if not negligible. You can see that the overall curvature actually slightly increases the amount of air that still sticks to the top of the wing, and it also increases the dynamic lift at the bottom of the wing. However, there are limits to this, and man has made a few more inventions to try and, again, increase the overall camber of the wing to try and reduce the speed at which the same wing can fly in a given situation. This is a split flap, which really creates more drag than actually creates lift. This is a Fowler flap, which you don't actually see very much in game, but you can see if you look closely at the trailing edge just before the flap, there's a little bit of air that creeps between the flap and the wing and actually starts to stick to the trailing edge of the flap. This is so far the best design for a trailing edge flap, but again you don't see it too much in game. What you do see is a leading edge slat, which you will see popping forward out of the outer edges of the wings on some of the planes that you'll fly, including this BF-109. Basically how this works is it puts a flap on the front of the wing and uses the same principle you just saw on the Fowler flap in allowing some air to creep between the flap and the wing to try and encourage it to stick to the upper surface of the wing to try and maintain some form of controllability. Watch now as the flap is retracted and the airflow over the wing is completely and totally lost, causing a complete stall. But extend the slat or flap again and you can see there's a little bit of air that still clings to the upper surface. The effect leading edge slats have on planes in game is very positive, but is honestly best described using a plane that doesn't have them. If you're using mouse aim, that means that the plane will tend to waggle and waddle around while you're trying to pull a tight turn. However, if you're using a joystick configuration, the effect is far more pronounced and far more realistic. It means the plane will have one wing that will tend to stall before the other. Doesn't matter which one, it could be either or. But it means that one wing will suddenly dip, causing the plane to snap into what we call a spin, where one wing is in a sustained stall and the other is not. To recover, you have to push the opposite rudder, push the stick forwards, maybe deploy some flaps, reduce the throttle, and then gradually, gently pull out of your dive. As you can see, if this happens at low altitude, you're probably dead. A device that you can use in-game to see where your wings are in that angle of attack we mentioned earlier before the buffeting and everything else occurs is a little something called a pipper. It's just below the aiming reticle, you can see it there on the runway, and it shows you exactly where your plane is heading, not necessarily where it's pointing. So I'm using it here to make a more or less smooth landing, but you can use it also to figure out exactly where your plane is actually going. Like I said earlier, not necessarily where it's actually pointed. So that's it for now. If this video is helpful to you, please like and subscribe, maybe leave a comment, and happy flying!